and your cursor will continue going for everything that they say. Now, I'll give you an example of my daughter, who, when I did a retell on her, after she got to the point where she couldn't tell anymore, she started making predictions, which is a great strategy. However, that's not part of the retell to make predictions. So as she was, I think the dog is going to, my pen stopped, because that's not part of the retell. If she started repeating herself, my pen would stop. Now, if the student starts to continue and get on track, then you can keep moving. The purpose behind that is for them to be able to do just what it's called, to retell what it is that they've just read, without omitting information, without repeating information, making sure it's relevant to what they're reading. So for each benchmark or each assessment, it should get a little bit better for two reasons. One, because they're learning how to do a retell. And then two, because hopefully their oral reading fluency is getting better, and they're able to read more, which would result in them having more to retell. You following? So it's a little bit different. It's not the strongest part of the assessment, but it will give us good information. It'll let us know if we started off with only 20 words and now we're up to 40 words, that means that our understanding is getting better. And our fluency is getting better as well, because I'm able to read more within that 1 minute time frame. Any questions about that?
So this is based on the story that they just read for the minute,
yes.
Right? And I'm looking at the numbers here. Are there that many, I guess, words in the story?
Yeah, it'll make sure to have it might not be that particular many words. So I really don't know, because I haven't counted all of the words. But it may be more than that, because sometimes they do additional words that wasn't actually in the story. So that's not the goal. If you're asking if that's the goal, no, that's not necessarily the goal.
Okay.
It's just the spectrum for them you to have room to actually record all of them. But it's not that you're trying to get them to say 125 words. Okay. You just want them, for instance, if they only read 5 words, then they should not be reading, well, I'll say 15, because we wouldn't have done a retell if it was under 10 anyway. Okay. But if they've only read 15 words, they shouldn't be able to tell you 75 words for a retell.
Okay.
Now, I will also say that sometimes, let's say they're doing oral reading fluency, they may have only read 15 words correctly, but they may have went through about 60. So they may be able to tell you, even though they didn't say the words correctly. That's another thing to note. If they're able to retell, but then they couldn't read the words phonetically, that's an implication for teaching. We're good? Okay, I'll keep it going. And that's it for that one. The next part of 3rd grade is the days. And the days is very much like, do you remember when we used to do the close activities? Not close. You know, we have our close reading. But are you familiar with close? Close is where you pick the best word to go in the blank. Kind of like when we did that Mad Libs, like which one.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not like find an adjective, find an noun. It's when they're reading a passage, and I'll show you an example of one here. If they're reading a passage, and then they have to choose which word best fits in the passage. I actually created this one on the 3 branches of government, because I believe that in 3rd grade, if it stayed the same, that's something that was covered. So you can make this cross-curricular, and you can create them, or you can look for some of them online, but that's exactly what the days is. The comprehension, where they choose the word that makes the most sense. And that's what we were talking about earlier with exposure. Some of them just aren't used to doing things like this, so that if you know that this is how they're going to be assessed, you can do practice activities with them, so that is a factor that can be taken out. So that you know, okay, it's not that they didn't understand the comprehension, they just didn't know what to do here. This was new to them. So I have samples here of Theodore Roosevelt one. I have the 3 branches of government, and I plan on making some additional ones that go along with what's being taught in science and social studies. That way we have that cross-curricular connection here. Also have a practice thing here for you to do. So I have these samples for you that you can get from Mr. Sessoms. I also, for DOR, sharing with you an oral reading fluency folder that you can do with them throughout the year if that's something that you're interested in as well. Any questions as far as the two measures that are assessed in the third grade? No? And this is what I was saying with the days. It's constructing reading from text, being able to choose the word that best fits. On Edmodo, I have resources that can help support not only Dibels, but just in general. I'll be uploading different things. Some of the files that I have are too large to send, plus I work with 5 different schools, so that's an easy place to share resources. The group code is right here. I will be here on Monday, stationary in Mr. Sessom's office. Because this is an overview, I want to make sure I'm able to answer any questions. So if you have trouble with Edmodo or you want me to walk you through it, on Monday you can come to Mr. Sessom's office and I can help you with that as well. So now, looking at grouping students, one of the papers that you received looks like this. Can you pull that out? And then you have another one like this. It explains the measures in 2 different ways, but it's the same information. This is just for the different modalities of learning. This makes more sense to me than the chart, but it might be vice versa for you. So I have both of them for your convenience. Okay. So let's take a look up here. Even though you have a copy in front of you, you can look up here. That way you can see where I'm going. Here's third grade, the beginning of the year. You see for the beginning of the year, the 2 measures is the DOR and the days. So let's take a look at the days first. The bigger number is 8, which means at the beginning of the year, the benchmark for days is having 8 of those words correct. If they have 8 or higher, it's kind of like with CRCT, that 800. 8 doesn't mean they're doing fabulous. 800 doesn't mean they're doing fabulous. That just means that they hit the benchmark for success later. They're on track. If they have between 5 and 7 words correct, that would be like your tier 2. The first group would be your tier 1. That's just core instruction. Between 5 and 7, that would be your tier 2, which means they need strategic support. They don't need a whole lot. It's not intense. They just need something to get them on track. If they have less than 5, 0 to 4, those are your tier 3, your intensive students that need a lot of support in that area. The same thing with Dibels, with the DOR. You have 70 is the amount of words correct per minute. So if they scored a 62, what tier would they be in for DOR, for words correct? Give me tier 1, let's speak the language. Tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3? Okay, let's take a look at this again. Tier 1 would be 70 or higher. That means that they hit the benchmark. So any child that scored on words correct 70 or higher has met and spelled out. If you look at this one, it might be easier for you. You see this paper here? We're looking at DOR words correct. So 70, and it says to 300, 70 or higher is benchmark. Okay. That is your tier 1. Tier 1 is all your students. That's just your core support. That means that they can be benchmarked 3 times per year. You're not overly concerned about them. You're concerned to teach them the core instruction, but they're not your progress monitoring students. If they scored between 55 and 69, it's in between these 2 right here, what tier would that be? Tier 2. How often do you progress monitor tier 2 students? 3 times a week? Maybe interventions 3 times a week.
Once a week.
Usually, typically, it is every 2 weeks or so, like bi-weekly. Your tier 3 students, those are the students that you want to assess weekly on this. And this program actually has progress model. You don't have to make up your own days or DOR activities. They have a progress monitoring piece for each week. So let's try this again. If you have a student that is on words correct 43, what tier would they be in?
Tier 3.
What about 75?
Tier 1.
Okay, and then if we did 67,
Tier 2.
tier 2, yeah, the below. So the well below would be tier 3, the below would be tier 2, and the at or above would be tier 1. You guys following that? Okay. Now there's also, that was for the words correct. There's also accuracy. So the two things that we're looking at in DOOR is, one, the words correct, and then also the accuracy. Because if they read 100 words, and only 10 of them are correct, their accuracy is really off. So let's say they read 10 words, but all of them were right. Then the accuracy is really high. So you need to look at both the accuracy and the words correct, which is what we're going to do now, because you can't just use one measure. There's several different things that you're looking at. You're looking at the words correct, you're looking at the accuracy, and then you're looking at the days score. So what we're going to do is we're going to get on our computers and we're going to look at Vport, how it looks, and I'm going to give you some of your student data. Before we do that, do you guys have any questions about the tiers?
I have a question.
Yes, and then tier 3 is weekly. Yes. Yes. Okay, so over here are your passwords. It's also up here. You can either type in that long address, or you can just go to Google and put in Vport login. That's usually the easiest way to do that. It'll look like
No, they're right there in the classroom.
it'll look like this. Is everybody here?
You said type in Vport login?
Yeah, if you go to Google and type in Vport login, you'll get directed to that page. It's probably easier to do that. So go to customer login. There you go. Vport login.
Did you get one of these?
But make sure your name is on it.
Oh.
It's specific to you.
Oh, this is, you got this?
And once you type in your username and password, just go ahead and hit log in. Mine is going to look a little bit different because I have access to all the teachers, but I can still walk you through it from there. I'm going to actually pull up one of yours.
Can we go to Dibels next, the one that says welcome to Dibels next student center?
Log in, teacher log
I
in.
went to this one. Pick this one. That was the first.
Can I have one of you volunteer where I put your data up?
Sure.
Give me a name.
Nero J0.
That's all I need is just.
Oh. Okay. Can I log in on it too, or?
Yes, we can both log in at the same time.
I ain't got that yet.
You guys on? Okay. So if you go to my class.
I have it down there, and I'm trying to
Okay,
figure
I'll
out.
wait. For now, I'll go to my class and go to scores. Okay, what are my results and scores?
No, because I can type in my report. Oh, that's what I was asking, what was it said.
So,
Scores, because I was looking at
I'll work with you guys one-on-one while she logs in. If you notice, you have the